Are we ready? Okay. Um, Intention for today is share my knowledge about herbs and what to do with them and how good they are for all of us, and to send healing where it needs to go today for all of us. And I ask everyone to join in that and send energy to those of us who need it. Thank you. Okay. Hey, Miss Carrie, how are you? Haven't seen you in forever either. Okay.
I was here last week, but it's good to see you.
Okay, so 20 years ago, I started taking herbal classes with the local witch in a couple of towns over, and learned a lot. She had a 10-acre farm, and she identified 50 different herbs on that farm. And part of our work through the 9 months that we took classes with her was to locate every one of those herbs and give a brief description of what it was, how it grew. We could actually pick some and put them in a notebook, and what we could do with them. And that was quite a challenge because some of them were so small that you had to really dig. And I fell in a stream a few times when I was trying to get one of them. Um, but it was a beautiful piece of property. The energy was great, except when you walked in her house because she and her husband weren't getting along. But those of us who knew what to do did our thing, and the house energy straightened out. So I learned a lot of things in that class. She was a great teacher. And in the middle of it, she broke her wrist. And all of a sudden, we see her with a cast on her wrist and this green something that she was drinking all day long. And finally, I said, "What the hell are you drinking, girl?" She said, "I'm drinking bone set, nettle, and comfrey root because they're good for healing bones. And I'm determined that this is going to heal in 3 weeks." Damned if she didn't heal that in 3 weeks. But she was chugging down that drink 4 times a day. So guess what I've been drinking since I broke my shoulder? I don't have any comfrey root. Comfrey is the the panel's still out on comfrey. Some people say you can't take too much of it; it'll make you sick. Uh, didn't bother her at all. But I do love nettle and I do love bone set, and I mix it with another herbal tea that I have, and I drink it at least twice a day, which I think is why my arm's healing faster. So basically, that's as a nurse, I wanted alternative because as a geriatric nurse, all I kept hearing from my patients was, "It's not worth getting old, your medicine kills you." And the more I was in my profession, the more I realized that was true. The side effects from medication are horrific. Um, so I wanted an alternative. So Sue was the first one. Sue Clements was the first one whose herbal class I took. And then I went to conferences with Rosemary Gladstar up in New Hampshire. She is the primo herbalist in the United States. She created traditional medicinals, put it that way. Um, so I've learned a lot from various herbalists along in my life, and I've learned a lot from making my own formulas. And my first real formula was when I was teaching at Ridley Lowell. The massage students would always ask me if they could practice on me because I was the only one that wouldn't get embarrassed if they didn't completely cover me up because I was a nurse and it didn't really faze me. So one day I had 3 massages, which were okay, but they weren't great. And then I had to teach all night. So by the time I came home, I hurt from head to toe. And I said to whoever was my guide, "Help me. I need to be able to sleep tonight because I have to work tomorrow." So I started pulling oils and essential oils out of my cupboard, which I kept everything in. And I had no idea why I grabbed them. I just grabbed them and I was told how many drops to put in or how much of the oil to put in. And I came up with this very um, wintergreeny smelling oil that I rubbed all over my back where I could reach because Matt was sound asleep. And I went to bed. And Matt wakes up as I come to bed. He goes, "What's that smell?" I said, "It's my new oil, but I needed something." He goes, "Oh, okay." And he rolls over and goes back to sleep. Well, the next morning, I wake up, not an ache or a pain anywhere. I was totally relaxed. Fortunately, I had written everything down because otherwise I would have been lost. And I was like, wow, that really worked. And the reason it was mostly wintergreen was because when I was a child, my Nana was a nurse. And you know how kids get growing pains in their legs? Well, we used to scream. That's how bad my sisters and mine were. Well, my Nana used to oil us up with oil of wintergreen that she got in the pharmacy, which you could buy back then in the pharmacy. And within 20 minutes, we were asleep. So that stuck in my head, but all this other stuff. So I started the next day looking up everything that I had put in this formula. And I had four pain oils, most of which I had made myself. I had two antispasmodics and four muscle relaxants and a couple of essential oils that were for pain. I've added a few since then. And I said, okay. So Matt comes limping out of the bedroom holding his back and he goes, "You look pretty good this morning." I said, "Yeah, not a pain anywhere." He said, "Can I have some of that stinky stuff?" He said, "I threw my back out when I got out of bed this morning." So we rolled it all over him and he was fine. So as I worked with this formula, I finally said one day, okay, I know one of you's helping me. Who's helping me? Please tell me who you are. And I see this beautiful Native American woman, and she says, "I am your great, 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 great grandmother. I lived in Canada, in Quebecois." Um, she said, "But my tribe was originally Anasazi and we moved." She said, "My father was the chief. I was his princess, but I was also the medicine woman." And she said, "I was so happy when you decided you wanted to work with nature and herbs, considering what your profession had been most of your life." So I thanked her profusely and said, "Okay, you're going to keep working with me?" She said, "Oh, yeah, I'll always be here." So I said, "Great, terrific." So whenever I was looking at a new formula, I'd say, "Okay, great, great, great grandma, um, I need your help." I forgot what her name is. Her father's name was Two Feathers, which is funny because in the past I've had a guide named Two Feathers. So it might have been him. I don't know. So she's always been there when I was creating new things. And when, again, I use my books a lot. I must have 100 herbal books. If anybody wants one, let me know. Um, because I always wanted to learn new things. And I bought a lot of herbal books that made herbal face creams and body lotions and stuff. Did those ever sell? Not really. Although my face cream did, because my face cream really worked. I did, all the while I was using my face cream, I did not have a wrinkle anywhere. And my skin was soft and smooth. COVID stopped me from making that, I guess, and I haven't made it since. But my sisters keep saying, "When are you gonna make that face cream?" Probably
Yeah,
never. Probably never. It's a pain in the neck to make, and it's very time consuming. And if you don't get it just right, it turns into a salve instead of a cream. And there's nothing more frustrating than spending 2 hours making a cream to have it turned into a salve. And does the salve work? Yeah, but nobody wants a salve for their face. They want a cream. Like, okay, fine. My hot flash spray has been selling for at least 10 years. Um, it really works. It also works if you live in a hot climate and you're just warm. You just spray your neck and rub it in and you cool right down. Because peppermint is what it is. It's peppermint essential oil. Peppermint is an adaptogen. In the winter, they put it in hot chocolate because it warms you up. In the summer, you spray it on your neck to cool you down. I always take some to Florida with me because I get a little overheated down there. Um, what else have I made? I made all kinds of teas. I've made pregnancy teas. I made a tea to help a fussy baby get to sleep. Um, my lavender spray, most of my students, oh, okay. All right, never mind. Most of my students who had babies would ask me for my lavender spray, and what they would do would be spray the bed and lay the baby down, and they would usually lay down with the baby, and they'd both sleep for 3 or 4 hours. Uh, it was amazing. Um, when I had my shop, I created something called Monster Be Gone for kids who had bad dreams. And basically, it was a control issue for the child. When the child saw the monster, she would, or he would spray the monster. And what the spray was chamomile and lavender. So the child would go to sleep, the monster would be gone. And I gave some to one of my Toastmasters for his daughter because she had terrible nightmares and she loved it. I mean, she's going through like 3 bottles this big. She just thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But it stopped the nightmares. So everything I make has a purpose. I do grow lots of things in my garden. Some of them last, some of them don't. I now have 3 beautiful echinacea plants, which I will not gather their roots until they've taken over because I have raised containers that Matt built me that are like 5 feet tall, so I don't have to bend over. And until they've taken over that particular container, I will not gather their roots because I value the flowers as much as I value the roots. An echinacea is an antiviral. It's an antibiotic. It's a disinfectant. It has so many qualities. Um, and whenever I even start sniffling, I start taking echinacea because echinacea and finally doctors have gotten this because I've been telling them for years, you know why your antibiotics don't work anymore? Because there's only one. You give somebody an herb, there's 100 different components to that herb. So it's going to take a germ a lot longer to figure out a way around a natural antibiotic. They finally got it and they're doing multiple antibiotics. And that's probably not going to work soon either. Who knows? What else do I make? I make my own St. John's wort tincture. St. John's wort is not only a pain oil, because when I make it into oil, it's a pain oil, but it's also an antidepressant. And having been a victim of what's called dysthymia, which is mild depression most of my life, as soon as I start feeling depressed, I take it 3 times a day. By the 4th day, I don't need it anymore. I put it back in the cupboard. It's a great drug. It's one of those things, unfortunately, it doesn't work after 2 weeks. You have to take a week off in between. Valerian root has been extremely valuable through this arm thing because it's the best muscle relaxant, as far as I'm concerned. It's the best one in the world. And it just keeps working. Um, and it makes you sleep, it relaxes you, and it doesn't have any side effects. You don't wake up feeling like you're drugged. So, my herbs are definitely my friends. And this room I'm sitting in now is my work room. And I have a 6-tier shelf that is filled with oils, tinctures, and herbs. Um, I have one huge bottle of my sleep tonic, which I jokingly say will either knock out a menopausal woman or an elephant. Um, it works fairly well most of the time, unless I'm in real serious pain. Then I have to do the pain thing. Comfrey root, again, I put that in a lot of my salves. Um, there's a very specialized essential oil called Raven Sarah that actually Sally puts in her henna, which I found interesting. But the Raven Sarah is specific for the chickenpox virus, which is also the shingles virus, or they're related, so that the cold sores, anybody who starts feeling a buzz, just zap it as many times a day as you can. It never blooms. If it's already blooming, it'll take a lot less for it to go away. One of my friends bought some for a friend of hers daughter who like constantly had a mouthful of cold sores, and it was the only thing. She had been to five different um, dermatologists, and nothing worked but my salve. And it's just three simple ingredients. So, I mean, yeah, almost all of our meds in the world were created from an herb. Aspirin was from bark. Um, why they didn't leave it there? Probably because they can make more money putting it into a pill and calling it their own. I don't know a lot about hemp and CBD. I've been taking a CBD oil through this broken thing. I don't know what it's done. I don't feel any different. Um, and it has like 0.25 THC in it. That's all you're allowed for over the counter, unless you have a special license to buy the other stuff. But most of my family smokes pot. I never saw the value of it, to tell you the truth. But I have a control issue. I don't like being out of control. So uh, it's not going to happen for me. Uh, although somebody tried to slip me a gummy and a brownie once, and I caught him, threw it at him. My brother-in-law makes great pot brownies. As a matter of fact, when he was on Exuma, the drug lord for that little island heard he made really great brownies, and he drives up to my brother-in-law's truck one day and literally throws a brick of marijuana in his truck and said, "I want brownies, Ron, and I want them by the weekend." And you don't say no to that man. He got his brownies. Yeah, it's called do what you got to do where you're living, because they weren't citizens of that little island. But anyway, so I've learned from older people. I've learned from my grandmother. My grandmother was a great gardener. Um, Again, most of my plants in the house are decorative. I have my um, hibiscus that I was telling them earlier is like a tree in the kitchen. She's surrounded by various pots of, let me see, I've got some pinks in there. I've got some, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff, but most of my cactus are in the north window. They love the north window. They love to bloom there, which surprised me. But they get light all day long, but not necessarily sunshine. So again, you gotta be careful. In my outside gardens, I plant thyme. I've planted onions, garlic. Uh, I have chives out there. I don't quite have a medicinal garden yet. I've been too busy to do that. But the echinacea loves being with the tomato plants. For some reason, it keeps the bugs away from the tomato plants, well, sort of like marigolds do. Um, so herbs are your friend. And can they poison you? Yes, they can. You got to be careful. You got to know what you're doing, which is why I studied. Because too much comfrey root probably could poison your liver and cause some issues. But again, you use it sparingly, and it works. And stinging nettle, I think Matthew used to have a patch out by the barn, and I got stuck by it once, but it took care of the arthritis in that hand. It's like bee stings. Aviaries, people who work in aviaries that have the little tiny worker bees sting them, their arthritis goes away. Go figure. Mother Nature has everything we need to help us heal. Yeah, the germs have gotten out of hand, but I think it's because of the overuse of medication. Because even 40 years ago, when I was a young nurse, the doctors, one of the secretaries would walk up to her favorite doctor and say, "Oh, I think I'm coming down with a cold. You got to give me a script for an antibiotic." And I'd say to him, "Don't do it. She doesn't need it. Your body can get over a cold." But no, they would hand out a penicillin for everything. And then eventually penicillin didn't work. And then the next generation didn't work. And the next generation, I mean, God knows how many generations of penicillin we got now. They still have mycins. I'm allergic to mycins. So, all things in moderation. Yes. Do we need doctors? Do we need hospitals? Yes, we do, because they do serve a purpose. Um, but I'd rather rely on Mother Nature. And some writer said the best therapy is walking in the woods. I really believe that. We are fortunate that we have a beautiful state park 3 miles away with a great pond. So we go swimming, and then we walk through the woods, and I identify as many things as I can, and look for the blueberry patches, which of course when I go back, when they've finished blooming and everything, the birds have already got them, so it ain't no way I'm getting blueberries out of that place. um, but there's nature, just listening to the birds, listening to the squirrels, uh, which is why I feed the creatures out in my yard. I love hearing the birds. I hate it when they bounce off my window, but I haven't quite figured out how to keep them from doing that yet. And then when I let one of my cats out, there's only one of them that'll go out. I'll say to her, "You go that way and you leave my birds alone." And she stops and she looks at me, and I say, "You know what I'm talking about. You leave my birds alone." And she goes in the opposite direction because we feed the birds over here, and she gets to go that way. So it's like, okay, you get it. Um, they're my children, my squirrels. I have possums. I have a skunk that lives under my house, unfortunately. I have a woodchuck and her family that live under my house, and another one that lives under my shed. I have foxes. We have deer. We have coyotes. And the coyotes only come out on the full moon for some reason. They only start yapping on the full moon. And I have a neighbor that has 3 little dogs, and she leaves them out after dark. And I keep saying, one of those dogs is going to be coyote dinner if she's not careful. But they haven't gotten them yet. But yeah, nature is our friend. And there are so many herbs. There's a German guy, Stephen Brunner, who's written a whole book about natural antibiotics. That's incredible. And he goes into not only the ones that are antibiotics, but the ones that are antiviral. And through COVID, I made an antiviral spray. Do you think I could sell that to anybody? I sold 3 bottles of it. I used it everywhere. I sent it to my family. My brother-in-law came down with COVID, ended up in the hospital. His wife, his son, and his daughter-in-law never got it because my sister sprayed everything in the house. My younger sisters, nobody got sick through COVID because they all had my spray. When they stopped using my spray, they all got COVID, you know. And I called it antiviral spray. You'd think people would get it, but no. It's like, okay, fine. So I stopped making that because it was fairly expensive to make, because there were like 6 different antivirals and antibiotics tinctures. And I make my own tinctures too with vodka. A lot of my herbalist friends use brandy. I think Rosemary Gladstone uses brandy. One of my was taught how to make it with rum from the natives in Peru. And he swore by his rum. And when he died, his whole house was full of tinctures. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to get in there and see what he had. But Yeah, he was taught by the natives. They chose him and taught him how to be a shaman. And he used to do cleansings in his shop. Um, and they taught him, well, they didn't teach it to him. I guess they gave it to him because he used to bring them antibiotics and tools and stuff. And in return, they gave him this spray that smelled like 40 different flowers. It was, oh my God, it was the most beautiful smelling stuff that they made. It took them 40 days to make it, and only shamans could use it. So I was having some problems with something, and I went to see him, and he said, well, you know, most people let me work on them naked. I said, that's not going to happen, Gary. So just get over it. It's not going to happen because my husband's sitting right there. So he says, okay, fine. So he's pulling stuff out of my head and doing his ritual. And then he spits this spray over me. And I was in heaven for 30 seconds. I said, can I buy some of that? I've never felt that good in my life. And he said, no. He said, it's only for shamans and it's to help clear what else I didn't get. So I went, okay. And he said, I did pull something out of the top of your head. I don't know what the hell it was, but it's gone. I said, thank you, I think. Um, but while he was working on me, what I saw in my mind was my alter ego dancing naked around this room, having a ball, my redhead. And I'm like, Matthew, did you see her? He goes, what? Did you see her? See who? She was dancing around the room. And he goes, there must have been some hallucinogenic stuff in that thing he sprayed on you. I said, no, I was seeing my spirit was free. And that's what he did for me. He freed my spirit. He was a blessing on earth. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. He just crossed over last year. So, the indigenous people have so many things to show us and to give us if we just learn how to value them and what they know, because they've been curing diseases for centuries without pills. Shamans know how to heal just by sending energy. They're amazing people. And who was it? Was it Laura that introduced us to Marion? Was it?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. She was incredible. She's a shaman. She's an incredible lady. So, Mother Nature has a lot to give us, a lot to offer us. She has her own way of protecting us. But since we don't value her, she's erupting. She's setting fires. Um, she's letting us see her anger at our disrespect. And who can blame her? I mean, when you see how big garbage dumps are, and everything is plastic nowadays, um, it's about a wonder she hasn't collapsed on all of us and made us pay even worse. But you said Pele's smoking again, Nick? Yeah. Is that a dangerous smoking or just a warning?
It's been going on and off for about I'd say at least a month, and it's like on for 3 days and then off for a couple. But it's the normal tourism volcano viewing
Ah,
spectacular. So it's
oh,
beautiful but not dangerous.
oh, good, good. Because I was afraid she was gonna smoke you out again.
I was wondering about that because she
Yeah.
introduced me. I think I told you the first day I arrived here, I fell into a lava rock, and so I had a big gash on my knee for days, and it was like I had we have noni trees. Noni is a fruit that has healing properties, so I
Hmm.
used noni leaves to wrap the wound,
Oh,
and
good,
it healed
good.
within 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Mother Nature is wonderful. Somebody was using banana leaves to heal um wounds. I made a honey paste for one of my friend's mother who had constant ulcers on her legs. And before they brought the visiting nurse in, she said, what can you do? So I made a honey paste, and it almost completely healed it. And her sister decided it was too voodoo hoodoo, and she called in the visiting nurse. But the visiting nurse now has honey made patches that they put on, and it totally healed the wound. And she said, that's what Paula was doing. But because it came from the visiting nurse, it was okay. But they have the wonderful wound care now with honey. Honey is such a healing. Um, those little bees, God bless them. They are they are the best. And it's hard to find the thick white raw honey anymore. What people call raw honey is still brown. Where I used to buy it up in New Hampshire, it was thick, white, creamy, and that is the best. As far as I'm concerned, I'm prejudiced, of course. So back to gardening. Herbs like crappy soil. They do not like fancy. They love sandy soil. St. John's wort just loves to grow on the side of the road. Unfortunately, it gets poisoned there by car fumes. Another place you never gather herbs from is on a high line with the electrical wires, because there's something that oozes out of the wires that actually kills and destroys. That doesn't kill the plant, but it destroys its medicinal use. So we were taught never gather along the side of any road unless you're 100 feet in, and never go on a high line. And of course, don't go anywhere near there's a dump or a toxic waste thing. That goes without saying. But a lot of the farmers will not let me wildcraft, which I thought was very interesting until I said to one of them, "Oh, do you spray your crops?" And he said, yeah, a little bit. Then I don't want your herbs because they're poison. So also what I found, and my first teacher taught me that whatever you really, really need, if you're really careful, it will grow in your yard. Like when I was going through menopause, mugwort took over my yard. Mugwort is a wonderful tea for menopause and perimenopausal women for hot flashes. Now it's taken over my yard, period, because you can't kill this stuff. But it's as long as it flowers in my yard, my deal is you can live. As long as you flower, you can live. If you don't flower, you get uprooted and you're in the trash pile and get burned. So I have mugwort everywhere. I have tansy, which is a good tea for stress, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. I haven't used tansy in a while. Tansy is another one you got to be careful of. It can make you sick. It could do something to your liver. And my roses, my rose bush. Matthew's been throwing our wood ash on the rose bushes for the last 2 years. Last year, I had so many blossoms on my rose bush, and they were huge. They were this big, and the smell would knock you out as you walk out my front door. So I gathered a lot of those. I have brand new rose oil for this year, for anybody who needs some and didn't get a roller bottle, which I use for ceremony. I use for calming. I use it when I get a headache. It's nice to roll in your temples and on your PowerPoint, your points on your wrist. I also have an anti-anxiety oil and an anti-anxiety tincture, which I have given to some banker friends of mine who said it's the only reason they got through the day, because the anti-anxiety tincture oil is oranges. And we all know how orange makes you feel when you sniff it. Well, this is 4 different kinds of orange. It's bergamot and red orange and blood orange, but the smell is orange. And so they roll it on their wrist points and do that all day long, and they get through their day without killing a client, which is helpful. Yeah, it's always helpful if you're not killing your clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything I make has a purpose. And most of it came out of sheer experimentation with a little help from my friends. And And actually, I had a friend who tried to do my genealogy, and he got as far as my great grandmother, Georgina, and then it disappeared. And he said that usually means that there was a Native American marriage and they wiped it out of the books. So he said, you probably, if you had that, whatever that test is they do now, you can tell where you came from or what your originality is. He said, yeah, you got Canadian Native American in you. He said, I have no doubt about that. So I said, okay, good. Because she told me I belonged to her family, which was kind of interesting that it just died out at my great grandmother. And she's the only one any of us knew. I mean, my aunts used to talk about her, um, but they never talked about anybody beyond her, which is why I asked my friend to check. But he said, nope, your genealogy stops there on that part of the family. So I said, okay, fine. But, I know she's with me and I know she helps me. And whenever a friend has something in particular that they need help with, I can usually still create an oil, a cream, a salve. My healing salve will heal anything quickly. You just got to be careful not to put it on anything deep because it'll make an abscess under it. It'll heal it that fast, and I've proven that on myself. Um, One of my friends swears it got rid of her toenail fungus. I don't have that, so I never thought of it. And I went, oh, okay. Sally's husband had a problem last week. He woke up and he couldn't move. His whole back was in spasm. So I said to her, do you still have some of my pain oil, my muscle relaxant pain oil? She said, yeah. I said, give him a massage. I got a text from him. Hey, lady, you make good stuff. Yeah,
Maybe that'd be good for Laura.
Oh, that's what she's over here saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It might, but we got to get to root of what's going on with Laura. That's more important than the pain. Because Laura, I think I've given you some of my pain oil before. I don't know if it ever worked for you or not when you had all your back issues. I thought I had given some to you, but yeah, after you get to the pinpoint what's really going on, we can take care of the other pain.
Right.
Um, because you know, a lot of my patients used to use it once they got home because they couldn't use it in the nursing home because I'd gotten in real trouble by that. But once they got home, their sutures areas healed a lot faster. Although now they use glue, they don't even use stitches anymore, which I find quite interesting. Yeah, crazy glue on your hip, and it doesn't come apart, and it doesn't fester. It's really great. So yeah,
Really
again,
crazy glue?
huh?
It's not really crazy glue.
It is crazy glue. It's sterile surgical crazy glue that they use to
They
put.
made it for that. I mean,
Yeah.
they use it in the military and in the field and stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
they do it.
Yep. Yep. It's amazing stuff. And it heals very quickly, unless, of course, there's a problem underneath, which most of the time there isn't. But yeah. So, I mean, science is helpful, it's useful. Um, but give me nature, give me Mother Nature. Um, and again, part of the thing, all my career, I loved having a garden. Why? Because as a nurse, I always had to be in white and had to be perfectly spotless and clean unless somebody peed on my shoes. But getting out and getting absolutely filthy, rotten, dirty in my garden was such a blessing. It was such a release at the end of the day from the burdens that I carried. Um, because even my ex-husband said, God, you look like a little tramp that you've been out in the, yeah, but I love getting dirty. I love harvesting something that I have planted. Um, I love making my rose oil out of my roses. It's it's part of who I am, connected wise, but it's just it's just such a satisfaction knowing I made that and it helps people. And as I said to somebody at the gallery, I was born to be of service to my fellow man. And in any way I can do it, if it means, plating a bunch of food and making it look pretty for the gallery, or if it means making a healing salve to heal somebody's boo-boo, I don't care. That's my job. I finally found my purpose. And it's multi-purpose, technically. But yeah, getting in my gardens. And when Matthew built me those 3 tall containers, because my knees have never been that good, that was like a blessing. It's like, yes, I can get dirty, but not have to climb around on my hands and knees. And also, we have raspberries growing in the yard. We have wild strawberries, which are disgusting. They're bitter, believe it or not. What else do we got? We got thornless blackberries that grow in our yard. I have a trumpet vine that's taking over the side of my house. I haven't quite figured out what to do with that yet. But my flowers move themselves around the yard. Even my bulbs move everywhere. I don't know if it's the squirrels are helping them or what, but it's great every spring to see what's coming up where in my yard that Matthew doesn't mow. So it's like, okay, what did the birds leave me this month or this year? I got Johnny jump ups that are going to be coming up. Johnny jump ups bloomed until December in my yard, which is unheard of. So I'm hoping I'll find them in the spring. And violets also, which are Johnny jump ups, but just 2 colors. They make a great syrup for pancakes. They are very soothing. They make a good teething oil for babies. So, any questions? Now that I've babbled for almost an hour.
That was very interesting.
Any,
Yeah, we have quite a few
it's fun.
plants, herbs, and fruits here in the regenerative farm too, and it's just amazing. Every time I see something, it's like something new, and there's something else to harvest today, and it's like really amazing.
I have a
It is.
question.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Sorry, about using honey.
Sorry.
You mentioned using honey. Like, how do you use it? Do you just use it like instead of like a antibiotic oil or something, or
You can plaster honey on something by itself, but I actually made it into a salve because it was so sticky that it would stick to everything, and she didn't like. Added some oil to it, whipped it up, and made it into a salve that she could spread, and we could put a nice dressing over it that wouldn't stick. And that's what the honey patches are. They're actually honey and the beeswax made into very fine plasters.
Huh. Interesting.
But yeah, you can put honey directly on anything. And it works, but it's just sticky and gooey, and you might find you have ants crawling all over you, So it's better to make it into a salve. But yeah, in a pinch, yeah. And honey on the inside, when you put it in your tea, obviously, that soothes as well. It's good for people with ulcers because it soothes. Diabetics have to be careful because it does bump your sugar up, but not as much as sugar. Strangely enough, it doesn't affect your blood sugar as much as if you took a teaspoon of sugar instead of a teaspoon of honey. So, and now they have all kinds of. My grandson brought me some honey from Montana that has blueberries in it. It has little chunks of blueberries or huckleberries. So everybody's gotten into honey, but it's also the bees are being killed off by those nasty South American bees. So the price of honey has skyrocketed because I used to be able to buy a 5-pound plastic, or maybe it was glass jar of honey for under $10. Now you can't touch one for under 20. So do I make a lot of stuff with honey anymore? No, but I do when I make my elderberry cough medicine, which is this time of year, I put a lot of raw honey in it because it soothes, it heals, and because the elderberry is so harsh. It sort of takes the edge off the elderberry. The elderberry is great for stopping your cough, but if you can't swallow it, it's not going to help you. I call my elderberry syrup rugged, um, but I have friends that buy it from me every winter. Um, I usually sell them 8-ounce bottles or 3-ounce bottles, um, because it's the only way they can get through the winter without a sore throat or a cold. My husband has a chronic issue with his teeth, and he's been gargling for the last 10 years with myrrh that I make into a tincture, which is really awful. But his orthodontist said, whatever you've been doing, keep doing it because it's preserving your teeth.
Cool.
Who knew? I won't touch it unless I've got a sore throat. If I've got a sore throat, then I'll gargle with it, but I always spit it out. He swallows it. I'm like, how can you swallow this stuff? Yuck. But he's used to it. But I'll drink my cough medicine, you know. Um, so, yeah, Mother Nature is, and elderberries, again, you have to be careful because a lot of them grow on the side of the road and you can't pick them there. So I buy organic from Oregon, your favorite place, Oregon. Um, Mountain Rose in Oregon is the best. They have a huge farm where they grow almost everything organic, and they're marvelous. And their prices are okay. They're not great, but to get organic, it's worth it. I try to make everything as organic as I can. And by the way, did you know that organic only means that 95% of that, whatever you're drinking, is organic? The other 5% does not have to be. That's a little worrisome. But if you buy from reputable countries and companies like Mountain Rose, Rosemount, whatever the hell they are, they make sure that where they get their stuff from is as clean as possible. So that's why I trust those companies. Star West Botanicals out in California is pretty good too. Because when I read that, I'm like, oh, so they could put anything in that 5%, and that could poison you. Again, reputable companies will make sure they're as clean as they can be. Because there's some things you can't get, like kokum butter. You can't get that organic because it grows in Africa, and who knows, but they source out people that they know are going to process it as cleanly as possible. Another thing I've started using for my oils is coconut oil, but fractionated coconut oil, because it's clear and it does not go rancid. So my oils are lasting a lot longer. Because when I make a batch of oil, and it could sit there for a year or two. So with the fractionated coconut oil, that's what I'm making the rose oil out of these days. It's going to last a lot longer and not go rancid. Because olive oil eventually does go rancid. I've had that happen to me. So, I want my stuff to last as long as possible because I never know how long it's going to be till I use it the next time or till somebody's going to want it. Because I don't have a big client base and I don't really care about that. But
I have another question.
It's fun. I've enjoyed. Yeah.
You mentioned your rose oil earlier, and you use it when you do ceremony. What do you do with your rose oil for
usually
your ceremony?
When we did Women's Circle, we always anointed each other's third eye. And for ceremony, like when we ordained Caitlin, no, not Caitlin, Katrina, we anointed her head, her lips, her throat, didn't touch her heart, but in that area, her hands and her feet with the rose oil. And for me, or for us, because we've been using it for a long time, we've used all kinds of oils through the years, but the rose oil just seems it's soothing. It smells nice. It seems medicinally holy, if that makes any sense. Um, it just seems like it belongs in ceremony. So that's basically what Sally and I use when we ordain somebody or do any kind of circle work. Um, I do it when I'm giving someone last rites. If I haven't been surprised, because when I worked in the nursing home, the nurses would come look for me and say, that person's leaving. Would you mind? And I'd say, okay. So I always kept rose oil in my purse, and I would use that to anoint the areas to release the spirit. And usually within 24 hours, the spirit left. So it's really, I don't know. Part of it's comfort, but part of it just seems like it's right to use oil and the rose oil in ceremony, especially since when I'm making it, I talk to it, I thank my flowers. It's a whole spiritual process for me to make that oil. And then I sit it in the sun in my little greenhouse, and the sun makes it. I don't. I just put the stuff together, let it sit out there for 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes I let it sit out there all summer because I forget about it. And then I bring it in the winter and I filter all the leaves, the petals out, and I have a beautiful oil that I can put in little roller bottles because I like the roller bottles. They're much better than trying to get a little, a regular bottle and you're going to drip it everywhere. The roller bottle just puts just enough when you do a swipe. So,
Well, thank you for that. That was a lovely gift, and I liked it, but I was like not sure what I was going to do with it, and now I know. Now I know why you sent it, which is
yeah.
great.
But you can also use it when you're stressed. Put it on your wrist points, behind your ears, on your forehead. It's great for calming you down. Just the smell of it. And yeah, the orange is good, but I don't know. There's just something about roses, probably because they're my birth flowers, and I've always had them around me because they were my mom's birth flower as well. So we've always both loved roses. And this is the first one I've found that has beautiful smell. None of my other roses, the knockout roses, don't have any smell at all, and nothing lasted in my yard like this. And I really think it's the wood ash that Matthew throws on it that it really needs the potassium, because it's like taken over my pergola. And like I said, there were blossoms, and it blossomed 3 times this summer, which it's never done. And I've had it for 7 years. So it's happy and it's giving, you know, and I bring the roses in June. I bring them as decoration for the food table at the gallery, and everybody says, "Oh, you brought your roses again." It's like, yeah. So I gave last month. I gave them to my teacher because she loves roses too. And I said, "Helen, take those home. Those are for you." She goes, "Oh yeah, but they're yours." I said, "Honey, I got a bush full. You can have those." So yeah, it's a blessing. It's a beautiful color. It's a peachy orange rose, which I have been trying to find. I had one when I was very young, and my ex-husband dropped a ladder on it and murdered it. And I've never been able to find one that color since. And I found it at Home Depot. Go figure.
Nice.
Anyway, any other questions? Because we're almost out of time. Do we have something to do next week?
Do another interview, or we're open to anybody else bringing their gift to share.
Do we have anyone left we need to interview that's like a regular participant? Or
Well, we
even
haven't done
regular?
Yeah, we haven't done Sally or Shirley. We haven't done Caitlin or Katrina. So
Okay, let's do it.
Let's think about that.